Good. So many things. Okay, so to your question, can you see it on your Oculus? Yes. All you need to do, and you don't need to build it before you can see it. In fact, you can see our featured flows and other flows that people have built. Just go to use the Oculus browser and go to a.flow.gl, which is the main URL we're working with today, and you will see the featured flows, and click on one. We'll come up and ask you if you'd like to be in virtual reality or augmented reality. On the MetaQuest Pro, the augmented reality, with mixed reality is pretty sweet, I gotta say, but it's either way, virtual or augmented reality works great.
Cool.
So, and the way let me just describe that for a minute. The way we think about, VR and XR is that we don't expect everyone to have headsets. What we've done is, meaningful and powerful just on a flat screen.
Yeah.
But we see it as like the icing on the cake. It's a very powerful experience. And if people are comfortable in headsets and willing, we do think that that's the long-term future. What is it that we're going to sit around and talk about, whether we're in person or remote? Having this content floating above the table between us, is really sweet. And we actually have done this and demonstrated this most recently at CES with PwC. We had environment set up with multiple headsets and iPads and flat screens, all looking at the same content, people standing around the table, being able to interact and have a really good discussion about the data. So that is pretty exciting sci-fi view of the world. But like I say, certainly not necessary to get a lot out of flow.
Awesome.
Thanks for your enthusiasm. Yay. Okay. So feel free to jump in with other questions, but otherwise I'm going to go ahead and build this. I'm going to build it nice and slow, just not with a lot of complexity, just so people can, David and Claudia and Raz, if that's you on the phone, maybe not.
That is, yeah, sorry about that.
So can you see now, Raz, or are you just only on phone?
Currently on the phone, it is Zoom booted me and it's been installing an update and it's waiting to reopen, but please continue. I will be there in hopefully the next 2 minutes.
Super. All right, so let's just launch into it here. Can you see my screen? Is it pretty crisp or is it fuzzy?
All right.
Okay, great. So let me start here. So the first thing after you come to a.flow.gl, which is our main app website, and you click create new flow, it's going to pop you into the select a template mode. So the templates do two things. In one level, they just show you a bunch of really interesting things you can do with flow and different visualizations. And another is it gives you a great starting point, because there's lots of parts and pieces to create a visualization, and this just bundles them up and puts them into space for you in a quick and easy way. In this case, I'm going to start with a 2D line chart, just keep it one of our very simple views. The first thing it's going to do is it's going to show you the sample data that was used to create this template. And you can move the window to the side, and this is actually a working visualization at this point. We call it a swarm. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that in a moment. But you can see the data, you can see that it's a CSV file. You can even download it so you can imitate it. The most important button you'll probably use is replace data, and you can grab your own data and swap it in here. So I have a climate change set of data that I'm going to drop onto the CSV. And the first thing it does is it pops up this remap template dialog, and that's really handy. And you can see that it got some things right. It put the year across the width axis, it decided that it should use temperature anomaly instead of life expectancy. That was the original data. It kind of got the country. It decided to do something strange with country. So we'll switch that to land and sea, right? And these are columns. These are the 4 columns that are in my data set that I uploaded. So right away, we start to see those 2 lines, and we'll get into a little bit more detail on how to make that look the way we expected. So what it did is it created, what the templates process did is it created a swarm. So a swarm is, first of all, you can see them on the timeline. We're going to build multiple steps today, so you'll see that this becomes a timeline. You can click on anything on the timeline to select it. And this swarm has a component, which is called a connections. You can select the connections, and you can see that we're connecting the dots when the column land or sea matches. So we've got 2, one of these is land and one of them is sea. And the swarm has this component. Once you get this idea down, it really helps flow make sense to you. You can see that we've got 2 axes here. Let's add the third, which is the land or sea. Oh, first of all, notice this. As soon as you do something, if it doesn't have enough information to figure out what to do next, you get this nice flashing configuration incomplete button. Whenever you click that, it will actually jump you to the UI where you need to do some new configuration. And by putting the axis to be land or sea.
Nice.
You can see the two axes show up. The other thing what we've done here is, it looks like it's colorized them by land or sea, which makes sense here. See the color scheme? It's using a color scheme for land or sea with a 12 color scheme. We can, pick different colors. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to something called the palette system. Now, this is new. It's a little bit duplicative of color scheme right now. So over time, we'll probably make color scheme go away, because instead, this is a much more powerful way to manipulate the colors. And it's new over the last month here. And we're pretty excited about it. So let me show you what the palettes can do. So I'm going to take a step back. I want to add an area chart. I wanted to do a chart that drops down. So in this case, I want to create an area chart when the column values match either land or sea. And that tells it to know how to take that line and draw it down to the origin. Notice what I'm doing here. I'm creating a swarm, and I'm creating these different components. Remember, swarm is the main visualization type. It actually just says there's a bunch of dots in 3D space, and where should they go? In fact, I can even show you the dots here using the sizes column. Okay.
Hey, Jason, your face is right in the middle of where you're working on the. Yeah, that's better.
Thanks.
Jason?
Yes.
I do have one question regarding the color schemes or palettes. I've tried it with a particular swarm, and it was basically as you can see now on the, I think the first one, is it land or sea? The one you have that's mainly green, the very first one.
In this case, I'm
yeah, that's C. That's C. Okay, if you take the C area chart, you can see that I'd say 95% of it is green and 5% is red, right?
Yes.
And yet your palette is 50-50. How come it's not 50-50? Like, it's not spreading all over the chart and just using this somehow a way of going 95 plus 5% instead of 50-50?
Great question. And the palette system helps you solve that particular problem. So what's happened is it's taking the 100% of the value, which is up here at 1.5, 1.6, and the 0% of the value, there's really tiny little numbers here, is this solid green. Okay. Right in the middle of that somewhere is the middle of your palette. But if you wanted to change where that line is, you can just drag the palette it's going to actually, since I'm altering a default palette, it's going to ask me to change the name. So I'll just call it RNG new. And now you can actually see in real time decide how much red you want versus green,
Okay.
which is pretty handy. But it's, in this case, it's still doing it as a relative amount. We also, this is even more powerful mechanism where you can say absolute value. So now you can see that, again, the number is really tiny. You may not see it, but it says 0.6. So now you can actually set the colors to be, exactly say, hey, anything above 1, I want to be a certain color. You can even make the cutoff more abrupt. And then finally, I'm going to do a little tweak here. First of all, I think cold should be blue instead of green. So let's make it blue. And what I'm going to do is I want to pull out the extremes. So instead of doing auto ranges, and you're going to see these auto ranges checkboxes all through the application, because when I first dropped in this data, right, it automatically knew what the min and max were, and it showed that. But you do have control over that. You just turn off the auto range, and you can set any of the minimums and maximums by hand, which is powerful. And that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to say, hey, anytime the temperature gets above maybe 1.2, I want it to go off the charts. This little box here represents being off the charts. And I'm going to make it a bright yellow when it does that. So see how, if you want to pull out anomalies, you can, have really good control over exactly where that is. Maybe I want to make it 1.0, and you can pick up a few more. And you can do the same thing on the lower end. So the green, that's in the data, the data went down to negative 0.76. Let's go down to -3. And now you can start to see the greens pop up. Now, this is one of those things you kind of just need to know where it is. Notice the axis has a 0 line. I think it would make more sense for the axis for these values to go above and below that 0 line. So I clicked axis origins at 0. That's under the axis options. And now you can see that the 0 line, that is the average between, I think it's between 1900 and 1980. And you can see that in the olden days, it was always cold and it was always well below average. And recently it's well above average. But now I've had total control over my colors to be able to help bring out the meaning of the data. Martin, did that help answer your question?
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
So just to remind you that what we're doing here is we're working with the swarm on the right-hand side. And it can kind of be a lot of options here. Something that you might want to do when you're working with it is you can click on this little dot and it'll collapse everything except the one you're working with. So maybe I just want to focus on sizes, which is nice. Remember, sizes is what changes the size of the dots. So it does take some getting used to all of these options and how they're organized. So the way I describe it is you can create a flow in minutes once you've worked with the tool a little while. Your first flow is going to take more than minutes, so be patient with yourself and you'll get into it and figure it out. Almost every week we're doing things to improve the UI. We actually have about 3 pushes a week, believe it or not. One of the most recent ones was that configuration incomplete button that keeps popping up. That's a really handy way to keep building things. So I'm going to move on to the next step, and we do that here with add step. And you can decide whether you want to keep working with the same flow or start with something new. I'm going to start with something new, so I'm going to call it blank. And I could go here to new visualization and start with a template. But for this example, I think I'm going to build it from scratch, so you can see more of the process here. So I'm going to say new object. I'm going to create that swarm. And the first thing it's going to do is it's going to say configuration incomplete, because I haven't given it a data source. We'll select manage data. In this example, I'm going to grab a spreadsheet from Google Sheets. And this is the temperature anomalies monthly data with the Southern Oscillation data that I was showing you earlier in the call here. And I just copy that URL and paste it in. Because I've already given Google Sheets permission, it just goes ahead and loads it. If the first time you use it, it's going to say, hey, we're going to access your Google Sheet. You know, you have to approve this, this access. So now that I've got data, each one of these dots is a row in that data set. And it's by default, it throws it into a random configuration. But that's the easiest thing we could do because we want you to be able to see something quickly. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, actually, I don't want to categorize. The most common one you'll use is a scatter plot. And across the width axis, not too surprising, we're going to put the date. On the height, we're going to put the global land temperatures. And there is our standard chart. Now remember, this is monthly data. The first one was annual data. So the monthly data is more detailed, and we're going to need that for to get the meaning I want as by the time we finish building this. One of the things that you may want to do when you see, depending on your data set, change the width or height of the whole chart. I'm going to do that here. I'm going to make it a little bit wider. You can click and drag this bar in the middle of any numeric field, or you can type into it. So I made it a little bit wider and taller. And you can see that it is only a swarm. It's just the dots to begin with here. So let's add, remember, we're going to call it a component, add a connection, and we're going to connect the dots when the column values match the, well, in this case, it's just there's only one data set. So it's matching something called, in the data set, hemisphere is the same for everything. We could also just, well, yeah, let's just leave it at that. So you can see that we now have a line connecting all of those dots. You can change the width of the line, you know, make it really fat, make it really thin. And that just has to do with, you know, how much data you have and how you'd like that to show. Now, remember here, we're editing in, or for a moment there, we're editing the connections. If you want to get back to edit the swarm, there's two ways to do it. You can click go to swarm, or you can click on the swarm here in the timeline. You can also click on the connections here in the timeline. So this is, the timeline is a really good way to navigate, but you don't always have to do that. You can also navigate here with the components dialog. Okay, so that gives us the basic structure of the chart. Let's work with colors. And what I'm going to do, actually, before I do colors, let's work, I'm going to add the third dimension.
Wait,
So,
what, the timeline? When
Yes.
you say, is this like, is this what you've added over time?
yes, so I've created these two steps.
Okay,
And now when I navigate between them, it actually will animate the data from one step to the other. And this step mechanism, you actually have seen it in all the flow. If you've seen any flows, right? You've seen us walk through these steps. Because that's such an important part of flow, that's why we call it a data storytelling tool. It's actually the other way around. We wanted a data storytelling tool, and we built the app to give you these steps and these animations between them.
cool, okay.
Okay. So now, just to be clear, I'm just going to reiterate the terms, right? You've got a swarm, which is a bunch of dots in space. You've got connections, which is a component, and you've got other kinds of components. We're going to show you labels and legends, and you've got connections, and then you've got steps. And if you get those three concepts, you're in good shape. There's a few other things you might encounter, which is perspectives, which a single swarm can go from perspective to perspective. So I'm going to show you that here real quick. I'm going to, by double clicking, I can hide some of the things in the timeline. You see this first, right now I'm only showing swarm 2, and at the first step, it's random. And second step, it all comes together into the timeline. Little refinements on the connections. In this case, it's showing all of the lines and animating the lines into position. Sometimes that's great. You really want that. In this particular transition, it's a little ugly, I think. So you can just turn off animate between steps. And now it'll wait until all the dots get into position before it draws the lines in.
Can you
So-
make the first swarm a massive ball like there was in the Messi video? Is it easy to make? Or?
Yes. Well, in this case, it's the perspective is the random perspective. So it's actually just creating a 1 meter square box and randomly placing all the dots within it. To create the sphere, I'm not sure how they did that. There's a couple of different ways. I think additional dimensions might be a way to do it, which is one of the more sophisticated parts of flow. So I don't want to, for your first lesson, I don't want to go there.
Yeah, okay.
But you also, of course, you can generate any XYZ points. If you're a mathematician, you can generate any XYZ points and create any shape you'd like. And a third way, you can bring in a 3D model and then select mesh surface will take all the points and put them on the surfaces of that 3D model. So you can create, create a mother holding a baby out of dots and then have that transition into, information about pregnancy or whatever. And so you can really bring a nice human element into flows. You can, of course, just include a model, the model of any 3D models you'd like, as well as images, text as well. But
what is the format of the 3D models that you can upload?
GLB.
So is it something you would work out in Blender or something?
Correct.
Okay.
Now, I will say that our import mechanism is not the most sophisticated in the world. We've obviously really focused on data, not on building 3D worlds out of models. But simple models do work, and I might as well just let me just do one so you get a sense of it. Choose a file bin. Let me find. Take me a moment to find the model. So textures, point clouds. Well, my demo media and assets doesn't have models in it, like I expected. Okay, the folder I was going to grab one. It's just a 3D model. It's not too surprising. Maybe I'll get that together.
So it's a bit the same idea as when you bring out the globe, and then it sticks to the globe. It's the same sphere. It's a same thing. It's a sphere, and the swarm goes on top of the sphere. Is that the same idea, or?
Yes.
Okay.
The globe is a dynamically created object that we build as opposed to a model that you would import. But yes. Okay. So that's good questions, though, and keep them coming. So what I'm going to do is so I want to add the third dimension here, which was that southern oscillation data. Notice what is selected. I have swarm 1 selected, and I actually want to edit swarm 2. This is one of the harder things in the UI. I wish I had a really great way to always have you be looking at the thing you care about. But, sometimes you want to show 2 models at the same time, 2 swarms at the same time. So anyway, sometimes you have to just keep an eye on which swarm are you editing, especially if you get 10 steps and 5 swarms. It takes just a little bit of doing. We're going to add the depth axis, and this is going to be that NSO data. And you can see, so first of all, you can see that we added the oscillation numeric index or something. It's a certain value which has to do with the temperature of the data, the temperature of the ocean. You can see that, first of all, we lost the first half of the data set. Well, why is that? And that may happen to you, and you're going to want to be able to figure out why. Let's go to manage data and take a look at the data. Okay, so you can see that the data set starts here in 1880, but the NSO data doesn't start in 1880. It actually, we only started tracking that around 1950. I'm just going to randomly, here we go. Around 1950 is when we started to get NSO data. So because there was no data for that third dimension, it didn't draw the dots. And that's what we do. If there's no data to match whatever your current criteria is, we just leave them blank. It's the most right thing to do. And in this case, in order to, since we actually do only care about 1950 and onward, we can add a filter. So create new filter. You'll notice a lot of things about Flow are designed to be non-technical. So in this case, to create a filter, instead of teaching you Boolean logic, we say, do you understand English and logic? So we're just going to turn it into a sentence. Show the row when column date. Actually, let's do it a simpler way. Show the row when column year is greater than 1950. And you see that it fills out. Now we're going from 1950 to 2022, and it fills out the data. You can create filter upon filter and even decide whether you want to and those filters together or them. That you can build some, really sophisticated isolations of your data that way. Okay, so we're starting to get what we expect, right? On the top, we see the NSO or Southern Oscillation data. On the width, we're seeing the temperature data. The relationships between them are actually really interesting. Let's figure out ways that we can show that off better. So one of the things that's bugging me here is that the parallax is pretty strong on a flat screen. And by parallax, I mean, well, you know what I mean. The closer dots seem to be higher than the farther dots, pretty extreme way. So that's normal in a 3D view, but in order to reduce a little bit, I'm just going to change the depth and make it so it's only 0.3 meters deep. Now, color is just a really nice way to bring out more meaning. And we're going to start, instead of having just a fixed color, let's go ahead and use a palette. And by default, it uses red and green. We're going to have a little bit more fun with that. Instead of doing a relative distribution, which we already talked about, let's do a categorical distribution. And the category I want to use is the NSO type. So this is what kind of, how is the Southern Oscillation been characterized? And you can see some of the values: strong El Nino, weak El Nino, and each value is associated with a color. I also want to show, you'll also notice some gaps. That's because not every column in my data set has a characterization, because sometimes it was neither. It was just a middle value in between the two. So the empty cells as category is the checkbox that says, hey, even though there's no data in this column, we think that is meaningful, and so we do want to show those. Happens to be showing them in a bright green, which I think isn't great, actually, because it's kind of non-data. Let's make it a dark gray. Yes. Question?
Nope, just an
Great. And now I'm going to go ahead and rearrange the columns here. So the strongest El Nino. Ooh, you know what? The strongest El Nino should be red because it's warm. So let's just reverse the, oh, that's reverse order. Oh, okay. We do have a new feature called Flip, which does a full reversal of all the columns in here, and it's not in production yet, so we'll have to come back to that. Meanwhile, so I'm just because I want my strong El Nino to be red, I'm going to go ahead and push it down to the bottom. So strong El Nino is red, strong La Nina. Remember, La Nina is the cold temperatures. I wish they'd come up with better names. It's kind of hard to keep track of El Nino and La Nina. They sound so similar to my American non-Spanish ears. So we've got, I'm just rearranging all of these columns to be in the right order. So we're going to go from strong La Nina to moderate La Nina to weak La Nina to weak El Nino to moderate El Nino to strong. Okay, so the redder it is, the warmer the temperature, and the greener it is, the less warm temperature. So now we can actually see that the red, see how well the warmer temperatures in the southern hemisphere, how well they impact the temperatures on land globally. And you can really see 2016 there. Let's just see if this works. I'm going to add in an area chart. In this case, I know the order of my data, so in row order, there we go. Okay, so this is the original one that we built. And like I say, this is the big concern right now with temperatures. We had the last 8 years were our warmest temperatures ever. And a big chunk of those years were in La Ninas. What will happen when we get to an El Nino later this year or next year? Could be temperatures really off the charts. I'm going to stop there and see if you guys have questions, and we can, yeah, open it up.
I'm still having troubles just understanding the connections every time you connect the dots in row order or when column value matches and everything. It may be just me and my understanding of the data, but even when you see, when you show the design now, it's not massively clear what you're trying to show with the connection in row order.
Okay, so in this case, let's talk about the connection versus the area chart. So for the connections, there's a couple of ways you can make connections. And in this case, let me use this one because it's going to be a little simpler example. Okay, so what I've done in this first example is I've connected the dots when the column values match the category in the column land or sea. We've got land and sea here. We can also connect it by maybe year by year. Now you can see that those connections say, hey, year 2022, where are all the dots that have 2022 in them, and draw a line between them. So in this example, this is a good way to really see the difference between land and sea, where the other way was, helped them stay together. I know it's not the most meaningful, but you could even do both at the same time. So I'm going to connect the land and sea. You see, they still got the line across the top, and I connected the year. First, does that help you understand how connections are connect the dots?
Yeah, I do understand the principle of it, but every time I try it, I'm constantly wrong with my decisions, and I'm like, oh, no, that's what I expected. But yeah, probably need to work a bit more on that.
Or if you have an example you'd like to share, we can take a look.
Well, not really, but yeah, it's I don't know, maybe it's an English thing. Maybe I just don't quite get it. Yeah, I need to work on it anyway.
So no such thing. So if something is confusing in the app, we should try to, as app developers, try to figure out why it's confusing and make it better. So sorry, I'm not going to let you give an excuse that maybe it's an English thing. No, our app needs to work easier, and I'd think about it a little bit more, but ping me and show me, and maybe there's something I can do to make it.
If I'm 100% sure it's just not about me, I'll tell you.
Now, this is a pretty complex data view I've got here, right, between these two data sets, because they're certainly related, but they're not, the temperature data and the El Nino data is certainly related, but it's not incredibly obvious what's happening. You definitely need to, move it around to see it. I think it works better, in headset or in augmented reality on a flat screen. But the net is, I think, still, even from this view, it's really powerful that the warmest years for land temperatures are the warmest, not always, but often the warmest El Nino months. The warmest months, I should say, are often this El Nino impact. And the fact that we have not had a strong El Nino for a long time points to maybe a crazy year weather-wise. Sweet. All right, as you can tell, there's lots to learn here. Every once in a while we say, oh, it'd be great if the tool was so much simpler, and and we even have a simple UI in here in the pull down. You can change between a complex and advanced and simple UI. And in the simple UI, you don't have models and some of the other objects to work with, and we take away some of your options here, so it's just a simpler view. But once you get into it, you're going to want to change the thing that needs changing, and you just need these options. So I'm sorry that it's so complex, but I am also really excited that, look at how much power you have, like with palettes. I think this is the most sophisticated palette coloring system we've seen anywhere, and generally not too hard to work with. And generally pretty easy to work with as well. So, but right. I have not been looking at the chat. Oh, Claudia, do you use ggplot?
No, that was more of a response to like how to think of adding a connection, adding a component.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Well, you guys have wasted a perfectly good hour with me here, and I really appreciate that. As you start to build, David, Claudia, Martin already knows this. Just ping us, send us an email. I'm at jason@flow.gl or bill@flow.gl. If you get stuck at all, we need to know. Obviously, this is still a fairly new tool. We are learning every day and making it better every day. And the only way we can do that is if people tell us when they get stuck and get confused. And so, yeah, you need to get in touch so that we can make it awesome.
Sounds good.
It's true. Listening a lot and correcting the few bugs and so on. But yeah, very helpful.
Martin has been with us 3 months as a certified flow designer. And what that means is he was probably like yourselves, but he happened to have time and really dig in and joined us for a program where we created certified individuals who wanted to show their skills with flow. And now we're actually, we have, a lot of large corporations and the UN and World Bank and folks like that calling us that want to use the editor or want us to just build them flows. They have some data, they want to experience it in this new way. And we're not a big enough team. We don't have enough resources to respond to everyone who does that. So we pass off work to certified flow designers, and they help us build things for corporate customers. So and Martin has just really excelled at that. It's really exciting to work with him.
That's great stuff.
So cool.
Thank you, everybody, for joining. We will put this up on YouTube in the next week or so. The trainings are every week, and or twice a week, this morning, and then Wednesday evenings. We try to do that so people from all over the world have a time that they can pick. And we mix it up. They're different every time, and based on how much expertise of the people that are on the call, we change a lot about what we talk about as well. So Come back again.
How do you do to join the session? Because thankfully Martin was there to give me the link, but I forgot. Like, do I have to register somewhere or?
Yes, so we send out an email every week to invite people. But if you still have, you can use this same Zoom link will work always.
Okay, because I tried using the one last week and it didn't work. So okay.
Okay, let me, Martin, I'm going to send you an email. I'm going to send you the Calendly that is used to where you can sign up, and
Okay.
it'll get onto your calendar and be easier for you.
Okay, thanks.
And I'll do that after the call. Any other questions? Thank you, guys. Have a great day, great evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye. Have a good day.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye, David.